Commander Taeyang stood on the observation deck of the station, staring out at the vast emptiness of space. Behind him, the busy sounds of the military base continued as usual. Ships came and went. Soldiers trained. Officers gave orders. Everything was normal, just like it had been for the past 100 years. But Taeyang's eyes were fixed on one particular region of space. The dark zone. The forbidden sector. The place where no ship was allowed to go. The place where humans supposedly lived. He remembered his first day at the military academy, 20 years ago. The instructor, an old warrior with scars covering half his face, had pointed at a star map. "See this zone?" The instructor had said. "Never go there. Not ever. That is the Terran exclusion zone." A young cadet had raised his hand. "Why, sir? What is there?" The instructor's face had grown dark. "Humans. Or at least, that is what the old stories say. 300 years ago, they sealed themselves away from the rest of the galaxy. They left us with one warning. Leave them alone, and they will leave us alone." Another cadet had laughed. "But sir, humans are just stories. They are not real." The instructor had not laughed. "Maybe you are right. Maybe they are just stories. But the Galactic Council keeps that zone forbidden for a reason. And I suggest you follow that rule." Crime. Taeyang had followed that rule his entire career. He had become a commander, led many missions, seen many battles, but he had never once crossed into the forbidden zone. Nobody had. It was the one law that everyone obeyed without question. Now, standing here, he wondered why he was thinking about humans again. Maybe it was because of the report sitting on his desk. The report from Ji Woo. Ji Woo was an archaeologist, not a soldier. She spent her time digging through old ruins, looking for artifacts from dead civilizations. Most people thought her work was boring. Taeyang used to think so too. But 3 days ago, she had sent him something that made his blood run cold. She had found records. Ancient records from a forgotten world in Sector 7. And those records talked about humans. Taeyang turned away from the window and walked back to his office. The report was still there, displayed on his screen. He read it again, even though he had already memorized every word. "Commander Taeyang," the report began, "I have discovered something important. In the ruins on planet Kethys 7, I found a data vault that survived for over 3,000 years. Inside were historical records from the first galactic age. These records mention humans many times, but they do not describe humans the way our current stories do. According to these records, humans were real. Very real. They were part of the Galactic Council once. They fought in the Great Plague War, when the Zentari Death Fleet tried to exterminate all biological life in the galaxy. The records say that humans were the ones who stopped them. Not the Vraxian Empire. Not the Korath Federation. Humans. The records describe human military tactics in detail. They were terrifying. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not value honor or glory in battle. They valued victory. They would use any strategy, any weapon, any trick to win. They attacked supply lines. They used psychological warfare. They turned enemy soldiers against each other, and when they finally attacked directly, they did so with such overwhelming force that resistance was impossible. But the records also say something else, something that confused me. After the war was won, humans showed mercy. They helped rebuild the Zentari civilization, instead of destroying it completely. They turned enemies into allies. The records call this the human contradiction. They were the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy, but also the most compassionate. Then, 300 years ago, something happened. The records are unclear about the details. There was a conflict called the Great Schism. After it ended, humans gathered all their people, all their ships, and all their technology. They moved to a remote sector of space and sealed it off. They sent one message to the Galactic Council. We are leaving. Do not follow us. Do not contact us. If you need us, there is a beacon. Press it only if the galaxy faces extinction. Otherwise, leave us in peace. Commander, I believe humans are not a myth. I believe they are real, and they are still out there, waiting. The question is, what made them leave, and what would make them come back? Tae-young closed the report and rubbed his eyes. He was tired. He had not slept well since reading Ji-woo's findings. Because if humans were real, that changed everything. The Galactic Council was powerful. Hundreds of civilized species worked together under its rule. They had fleets of warships, armies of soldiers, technology that could destroy entire planets. They had kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. But if the old records were true, humans had been stronger, much stronger, and they had chosen to leave. Why would the strongest warriors in the galaxy choose isolation? What were they afraid of? Or what were they protecting the galaxy from? His communications console beeped. Tae-yang pressed the button, and Ji-woo's face appeared on the screen. She looked worried. "Commander," she said, "I need to show you something else. I found another data file. This one is more recent, only 300 years old. It is a recording from a council session, right before humans left." "Send it to me," Tae-young said. The file arrived moments later. Tae-young opened it and watched. The recording showed the old council chamber. Dozens of species representatives sat in a circle. In the center stood a human. Tae-young leaned forward, studying the figure carefully. The human looked similar to several species in the galaxy. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But there was something different about the way the human stood. Something that suggested coiled strength, controlled power. The human was speaking. "We are leaving. This is not a punishment for you. This is not anger. This is necessity. We have become too good at war. We have forgotten how to do anything else. When we look at problems, we see only military solutions. When we look at other species, we see only potential enemies or allies. This is not healthy. This is not who we want to be. We need time to remember what it means to be human. Time to build instead of destroy. Time to create art, to explore science, to simply exist without constantly preparing for the next battle. We cannot do that here. The galaxy keeps pulling us into conflicts. So we are removing ourselves from the equation. Raid. But we are not abandoning you. We leave behind this beacon. If the galaxy truly faces extinction, if there is a threat that no one else can stop, press the beacon. We will come. Until then, goodbye." The recording ended. Tae-young sat in silence for a long moment. His console beeped again. This time, it was not Ji-woo. It was an emergency alert. High priority. Galaxy-wide broadcast. Tae-young opened the message and felt his stomach drop. Alert to all galactic defense forces. Unknown enemy contacts detected at the galactic rim. Multiple colony worlds have gone silent in Sector 9. All ships are ordered to investigate immediately. Threat level, unknown. Tae-young stood up quickly. He had a bad feeling about this. A very bad feeling. He thought about the beacon. The forbidden button that nobody had ever pressed. The emergency call to a species that might not even exist anymore. Surely they would not need it. The Galactic Defense Forces could handle any threat. They had to. But as he rushed to the command center, Tae-young could not shake the feeling that everything was about to change. That the galaxy was about to learn whether humans were really just a myth, or whether they were something much more terrifying. The first planet died in silence. One day, the colony world of Heraxis 3 was home to 12 million people. Farmers, teachers, families living peaceful lives under a warm sun. The next day, there was nothing. No distress call. No warning. Just silence. When the scout ships arrived to investigate, they found a dead world. The oceans were gone. The forests were gone. The cities were gone. Even the soil was gone. The entire planet had been stripped down to bare rock. It looked like someone had taken a giant knife and scraped away every bit of life and matter from the surface. Admiral Hyun-woo had seen many terrible things in his long military career, but he had never seen anything like this. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Times Valor's Edge asterisk, and stared at the images coming from the scout ships. "How is this possible?" he asked his science officer. The science officer, a thin creature with 4 arms, shook his head. "I do not know, Admiral. The planet has been completely harvested. Everything organic and metallic has been removed. It would take thousands of ships months to do this. But according to the timeline, it happened in less than 12 hours. 12 hours, Hyun-woo repeated. To consume an entire world. Yes, Admiral. Hyun-woo felt cold fear creeping up his spine. Send a priority message to the Council. We need reinforcements. Lots of them. But by the time the reinforcements arrived, 3 more planets had gone silent. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Councillor Jae-hoon, representing the Vraxian Empire, stood before the assembly. His face was grim. "We are facing an unknown enemy," he said. "We are calling them the Devourer Swarm. They appeared at the edge of the galaxy, and they are moving inward, consuming everything in their path. So far, we have lost 16 colony worlds. That is over 200 million dead." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Councillor Bora, a leader from the Silk Federation, stood up. "How are we fighting them? What weapons work against them?" Jae-hoon's expression grew darker. "That is the problem. Admiral Hyun-woo engaged them in the Corrales system 3 days ago. The battle was a disaster. For every enemy ship we destroyed, more appeared. Their technology adapts to our weapons in real time. Energy weapons that worked in the first minute stopped working in the second minute. Missiles that hit targets at the start of the battle were intercepted by the end. They learn. They evolve. And they never stop coming." High Chancellor Dong-hyun, the leader of the council, spoke up. "What are our options?" "We are gathering the full galactic defense fleet," Jae-hoon said. "Every available warship from every member species. We will make our stand at the threshold gate. It is a natural choke point. If we can hold them there, we can prevent them from reaching the core worlds." "And if we cannot hold them?" Dong-hyun asked. Nobody answered. Captain Min Seo received her orders 2 days later. She was to take her ship, the Times Eternal Dawn asterisk, to the threshold gate and join the defense fleet. It would be the largest gathering of military force in 500 years. Min Seo was a good captain. She had served for 15 years without losing a single battle. But as she read the intelligence reports about the swarm, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Fear. The reports showed enemy ships that looked like nothing she had ever seen. They were not elegant like Vraxian cruisers or brutal like Korath warships. They were organic and mechanical at the same time. Twisted masses of metal and flesh that moved like living things. And there were thousands of them. Maybe millions. "Captain," her first officer said, "the crew is ready. We can depart whenever you give the order." Min Seo looked at her officer. He was young, barely 25. This would probably be his first real battle. Maybe his last. "Tell the crew to say goodbye to their families," Min Seo said quietly. "Make sure everyone sends final messages home." The officer's face went pale. "Captain, do you think—" "I think we should be prepared for anything," Min Seo interrupted. "Now go. We leave in 2 hours." The battle at the threshold gate began on a cold morning. Admiral Hyun-woo commanded over 5,000 ships from 100 different species. It was an impressive sight, ships of every size and shape, all ready to defend the galaxy. Captain Min Seo watched from her position in the formation. The Times, Eternal Dawn Times, was part of the third defensive line. If the enemy broke through the first 2 lines, it would be her turn to fight. She did not have to wait long. The swarm arrived like a plague of metal locusts. They poured through the gate in waves, thousands of ships moving in perfect coordination. They did not use formations like normal fleets. They moved like a liquid, flowing around obstacles, surrounding targets, overwhelming through sheer numbers. The first defensive line opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams, missiles, and plasma bursts. Hundreds of swarm ships exploded. For a moment, Minseo felt hope. Then more ships appeared. And more. And more. The swarm absorbed the losses without slowing down. They crashed into the first defensive line like a wave hitting a wall. Ships that had fought bravely for centuries were torn apart in seconds. The swarm did not just destroy them. They consumed them, breaking the ships down into base materials even as the battle continued. Second line, prepare to engage. Admiral Hyun Woo's voice came over the communications channel. He sounded tired. The second defensive line lasted longer than the first, but not by much. Minseo watched in horror as the swarm adapted to every tactic, every weapon, every strategy. The galactic forces were not losing. They were being studied, understood, and then efficiently dismantled. Third line, engage now, Hyunwoo ordered. All ships, full attack. Minseo took a deep breath. All weapons, fire at will. Give them everything we have. The Times, Eternal Dawn Times, and hundreds of other ships charged forward. Minseo's crew fought with desperate courage. They destroyed enemy ships, saved Allied vessels, and held their position even as chaos erupted around them. But it was not enough. It would never be enough. An enemy ship latched onto the Times, Eternal Dawn's Times hull. Minseo felt the ship shake as the swarm began to cut through the armor. Hull, breach on decks 3 through 7, her tactical officer shouted. They are inside the ship. Minseo grabbed her sidearm. Security teams, repel boarders. Engineering, seal those decks. But even as she gave orders, she knew the truth. They were going to lose. The entire fleet was going to lose. All ships. Admiral Hyunwoo's voice came over the channel. One last time. He sounded calm, accepting. It has been an honor serving with you. Fight well, die well. The transmission cut off as the flagship Times, Valor's Edge Times, exploded. Back on the Council homeworld, the emergency session had turned into chaos. Reports streamed in of the disaster at the threshold gate. Half the fleet destroyed in 3 hours. The swarm was continuing to advance. At their current speed, they would reach the core worlds in 2 weeks. We have to evacuate, someone shouted. Where? Another counselor yelled back. They are consuming everything. There is nowhere to run. Counselor Jae-hoon stood up. His hands were shaking. There is one option. One last hope. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what he was going to say. The beacon, Jae-hoon said. We must press the beacon and call the humans. No, Counselor Bora said immediately. Humans are a myth, a story. We would be wasting our time on legends while the galaxy burns. What if they are not a myth? Jae-hoon asked. What if they are real? What if they are waiting for us to call? And what if they are dead? Bora shot back. 300 years is a long time. They could be extinct. High Chancellor Dong-hyun raised his hand for silence. The chamber quieted. He looked old suddenly, ancient and tired. We are facing extinction, Dong-hyun said. Every species in this galaxy will be dead in a month unless something changes. The beacon is our last option. Maybe humans will answer. Maybe they will not. But I would rather die knowing we tried everything than die wondering if we could have been saved. He stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. There, on a raised platform, sat a crystalline device. It had been there for 300 years, untouched, waiting. The beacon. Dong-hyun's hand hovered over it for a long moment. Then he pressed it. A pulse of energy spread out from the device, rippling through space faster than light. It crossed the galaxy in seconds, carrying one simple message: help us. Then there was silence. The council waited. Hours passed. Then, days. The swarm continued to advance. More worlds fell. More people died, and the humans did not answer. Lieutenant Sujin sat alone in the listening post, staring at her screens. Her job was simple: monitor the Terran exclusion zone and report any activity. For 5 years, she had done this job. For 5 years, she had seen nothing. The Forbidden Zone was completely silent. No ships, no signals, no signs of life. It was the most boring assignment in the entire Galactic Defense Forces. But today was different. Today, the beacon had been pressed. Today, somewhere in that silent zone, humans might have received the call for help. If they existed. If they cared. Sujin checked her instruments for the 100th time. Nothing. The zone remained as quiet as a grave. Her communications panel beeped. She opened the channel. It was Admiral Hyun-woo, or what remained of his fleet. They had survived the battle at the threshold gate. Barely. Now they were falling back to the next defensive position. Lieutenant Sujin, any activity in the zone? Hyun-woo's voice was rough, exhausted. No, sir, Sujin replied. No ships, no signals, nothing. The zone is completely quiet. There was a long pause. How long since the beacon was activated? 3 days, sir. Another pause. Understood. Keep monitoring. Hyun-woo out. The channel closed. Sujin leaned back in her chair and sighed. 3 days. If humans were real, if they received the message, surely they would have responded by now. The galaxy was dying, and the legendary warriors were nowhere to be found. Maybe Counselor Bora had been right. Maybe humans were just a myth after all. On the Council homeworld, panic had taken hold. Billions of refugees crowded into ships, trying to flee to the far edges of the galaxy. But there was nowhere safe to go. The swarm was everywhere now, spreading like a disease, consuming world after world. Ji-woo worked in her small research lab, surrounded by ancient texts and data tablets. While everyone else prepared to die, she tried to understand. Why did humans leave? What were they so afraid of? She found a fragment of text in the oldest records. It was written in ancient human language, translated roughly into Galactic Standard. We have become what we fought against. We are too efficient at killing, too good at war. When every problem looks like a battle, when every solution requires violence, you have lost what it means to be civilized. We must step away. We must remember how to be more than warriors. Ji-woo read it over and over. Humans had left because they were too dangerous. They had feared themselves more than any enemy. What kind of species does that? Ji-woo read it. Allo. What kind of warriors choose peace when they could rule the galaxy? Another text caught her eye. This one was more recent. From right before the humans departed. Humanity does not rush to war. They calculate. They prepare. They gather information. And when they finally move, when they finally act, reality itself takes notice. Ji-woo frowned. Calculate. Prepare. How long does that take? How much time do humans need before they act? Her console beeped. A message from Commander Tae-young. Ji-woo, we are evacuating the sector. You need to leave now. The swarm will be here in 6 days. 6 days. Ji-woo looked at the ancient texts, at the years of research scattered around her lab. She had spent her life studying dead civilizations. Now, she was about to join them. She sent a message back. Understood, Commander. I will be on the last transport, but she did not pack her things. Instead, she kept reading. If these were her last days, she wanted to understand. She needed to know if pressing the beacon had been the right choice, or just a final desperate act by a dying civilization. Captain Minseo and the survivors of the times, Eternal Dawn times, had managed to limp to a repair station. Her ship was badly damaged. Half her crew was dead, but they were alive, which was more than most could say. She walked through the corridors of the station, seeing thousands of wounded soldiers and refugees. The medical facilities were overwhelmed. There were not enough doctors, not enough supplies, not enough hope. A young medic approached her. He looked like he had not slept in days. "Captain Minseo? There is someone asking for you. Says it is important." Minseo followed him to a recovery room. Inside, she found one of her own crew members, a tactical officer named Sung Ho. He had been badly injured in the battle, but his eyes were alert. "Captain," Sung Ho said weakly, "I analyzed the swarm's attack patterns before our systems failed. I found something." "What?" Minseo asked, sitting beside his bed. "They are not just consuming randomly. They have a pattern, a purpose. They are moving toward the oldest settled regions of the galaxy, the places where civilizations have existed the longest. It is like they are specifically targeting established life." Minseo felt a chill. "Why would they do that?" "I do not know," Sung Ho said. "But Captain, there is something else. I checked historical records. The swarm's technology matches descriptions of an ancient AI civilization that disappeared thousands of years ago. They were experimenting with self-replicating machines. The records say they lost control and had to destroy their own creation. But what if they did not destroy all of it? What if some survived and evolved? You are saying the swarm is an ancient weapon that went wrong? I am saying it is possible," Sung Ho replied. "And if that is true, then conventional warfare will never stop them. They have been adapting and improving for thousands of years. We need something different, something they have never encountered before." Minseo understood what he was implying. "We need humans. If they exist, yes," Sung Ho said. "But Captain, it has been 10 days since the beacon was pressed. If they were coming, they would be here by now." Minseo had no answer for that. High Chancellor Donghyun stood in the empty council chamber. Most of the counselors had fled. The ones who remained were making final preparations. The swarm would reach the homeworld in 4 days. There would be no more running after that. Counselor Jae-hoon entered the chamber. He looked thin, like he had aged years in just 2 weeks. "Any response from the listening posts?" Donghyun asked. "No," Jae-hoon replied. "The Terran exclusion zone remains silent. It has been 13 days since we pressed the beacon. I do not think they are coming." "Jae-hoon," Donghyun nodded slowly. "I made the wrong choice then. I gambled everything on a myth." "You made the only choice we had," Jae-hoon said gently. "No one blames you," Jae-hoon said. Jae-hoon said. "The dead might," Donghyun said bitterly. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Donghyun spoke again. "What do you think happened to them?" "The humans?" Jae-hoon considered the question. "Maybe they are dead. Maybe they destroyed themselves. Or maybe they really did achieve what they wanted. Maybe they learned to live in peace and forgot how to fight. Maybe that is why they are not coming. They cannot help us because they are not warriors anymore. Then we press the beacon for nothing," Donghyun said. "Perhaps," Jae-hoon said. "Or perhaps they need time. The old texts say humans do not rush. They prepare. They calculate. Maybe 13 days is not long enough. We do not have more time," Donghyun said. At the listening post, Lieutenant Soo-jin prepared for evacuation. Her orders had come through. The station was too close to swarm territory. She had to leave within the hour. She took one last look at her monitors. The Terran exclusion zone was still silent. Dark. Empty. She thought about the beacon. That desperate signal sent into the void, hoping for heroes who might not exist. It felt sad somehow. Like the galaxy's last prayer going unanswered, Sujin began shutting down her systems. As she reached for the final switch, something caught her eye. A flicker on one of the screens. Just a tiny blip at the very edge of the exclusion zone. She paused. Probably just a sensor ghost. Her equipment was old, prone to false readings. But she checked anyway. Professional habit. The reading was gone, nothing there. She shook her head and reached for the switch again. Then every alarm in the listening post went off at once. Sujin stared at her screens in shock. Energy readings. Massive energy readings coming from inside the exclusion zone. But not from one location. From hundreds of locations. Thousands. No, she whispered. That is impossible. She watched as space itself seemed to twist and fold. The sensors could not properly track what they were seeing. It was like reality was breaking, bending, changing. Ships were appearing. Not jumping in through normal faster-than-light travel. They were simply appearing. All at once. Across 50 light-years of space. Human ships. Thousands of them. Sujin's hands shook as she opened a communications channel to Fleet Command. "This is Lieutenant Sujin, at listening post 7 to 9, she said, her voice cracking. I need to speak with Admiral Hyun-woo immediately. The humans are here. Repeat, the humans are here." Captain Min Seo had thought she was going to die. The Times' Eternal Dawn Times and the remains of the defense fleet had been ordered to make a final stand at the threshold gate. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. The swarm was coming. And this time, there would be no retreat. This was where the galaxy would make its last stand and fall. Min Seo stood on her bridge, watching the massive swarm fleet approach. There were thousands of enemy ships, maybe tens of thousands. They moved like a living thing, flowing through space, consuming everything in their path. All ships, Admiral Hyun-woo's voice came over the communications channel. It has been an honor. Hold the line as long as you can. Make them pay for every inch. Min Seo took a deep breath. Weapons officer, prepare to fire on my command. Aye, Captain, the weapons officer replied. His voice was steady, but Min Seo could see his hands shaking. The swarm entered weapons range. Min Seo opened her mouth to give the order to fire. Then something impossible happened. Every sensor on every ship suddenly screamed in alarm. Space itself began to twist and distort. Min Seo felt her stomach lurch, as reality seemed to bend around them. Captain, her science officer shouted, something is appearing between us and the swarm. What do you mean, appearing? Min Seo demanded. I mean appearing, Captain. Ships. Hundreds of them. They are not jumping in through normal FTL. They are just appearing. Min Seo stared at her display screens. The science officer was right. Ships were materializing out of nothing, filling the space between the defense fleet and the swarm. But these were not swarm ships. These were something else entirely. They were sleek and dark, made of sharp angles and smooth curves. They looked predatory, dangerous, like weapons designed by artists, and they were appearing everywhere. Not just at the threshold gate, but across the entire front line. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. What are they? The weapons officer whispered. Min Seo felt her heart pounding. She knew. Somehow she knew. Humans, she said quietly. They are human ships. The swarm seemed to hesitate. For the first time since they had appeared, the swarm stopped its advance. It was like they were confused, uncertain. Then a voice cut through every communication channel in the fleet. It was calm, almost gentle, speaking in perfect galactic standard. This is Rear Admiral Sung-ho, of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your call. We apologize for the delay. We needed to confirm the threat was real and gather the necessary forces. The voice paused. Min Seo could hear her own breathing in the sudden silence. All galactic forces, retreat to a safe distance. We will handle this. Handle this? someone muttered on an open channel. There are millions of swarm ships, Captain, Min Seo's tactical officer said urgently. I am reading their power signatures. Captain, each of those human ships is putting out more energy than our entire fleet combined. Min Seo felt cold. I am seeing the same readings, Captain, the science officer confirmed. I have never seen power generation like this. What kind of technology are they using? Before anyone could answer, the swarm attacked. They launched everything they had at the human fleet. Millions of weapons. Adaptive missiles that could change course mid-flight. Energy beams that could burn through any armor. Reality-warping attacks that could tear ships apart on a molecular level. The human fleet did not even seem to notice. Point defense systems activated across the human ships, so fast and so precise that they looked like solid walls of light. Every single swarm weapon was destroyed before it reached its target. Not most of them. Not 90%. Every single one. Then the humans fired back. Min Seo had seen many weapons in her career. Plasma cannons. Fusion missiles. Particle beams. She thought she understood the limits of what was possible in warfare. She was wrong. The human weapons did not just destroy swarm ships. They erased them. One moment a swarm vessel would be there, and the next moment it would simply cease to exist, broken down into its base atoms, scattered into space like dust. The swarm tried to adapt. That was what made them so dangerous. They learned from every attack, evolved past every defense. Min Seo watched as the swarm ships began to change, trying to develop shields against the human weapons. It did not matter. The humans adapted faster. Every time the swarm evolved, the human weapons changed to counter it. It was like watching a fight between a child and a trained warrior. The swarm was powerful, yes, but the humans were on a completely different level. How are they doing this? The science officer breathed. How are they adapting so fast? Min Seo had no answer. She could only watch as the battle unfolded. The human fleet moved in perfect coordination. Thousands of ships acting as one. They flowed through the swarm formation like a blade through water. Cutting, destroying, dismantling, but it was not mindless slaughter. It was precise, surgical. Every shot hit exactly where it needed to. Every movement served a purpose. Within an hour, the swarm's advance had stopped. Within 2 hours, they were in retreat. Within 3 hours, half the swarm fleet was destroyed. Admiral Hyun Woo's voice came over the communications channel. He sounded shocked. All ships, hold position. Let the humans work. Commander Taeyang had rushed to the command center when he heard the news. Humans were real. They had come. They were fighting the swarm. He stood with a dozen other officers, watching the battle feeds in stunned silence. One of the younger officers spoke up. Sir, I thought humans were supposed to be powerful warriors. But this is not just power. This is something else. They are not just winning. They are completely dominating. Taeyang nodded slowly. 300 years. They had 300 years to advance their technology while isolated from the rest of the galaxy. We stayed the same. They did not. But sir, another officer said, why did they wait so long to respond? 13 days. Millions died while they waited. Would you rush into a fight without knowing what you are facing? Taeyang asked. They studied the enemy. They gathered their forces. They made sure that when they arrived, they could actually win. That is the difference between us and them. We react. They plan. On the council homeworld, High Chancellor Dong Hyun watched the battle reports with tears streaming down his face. They were saved. The galaxy was saved. Counselor Jae-hoon stood beside him. They came, Jae-hoon said quietly. The legends were true. Yes, Dong Hyun said. But look at them. Jae-hoon, look at what they can do. We pressed the button and called for help. But what happens when we have something they want? What happens if they decide not to leave after this is over? Jae-hoon had no answer. The battle continued for 6 hours. 6 hours of humans methodically destroying the swarm. But Minseo noticed something strange. The humans were not just killing. They were herding, pushing the swarm back, forcing them into a specific direction. "Captain," her tactical officer said, "the humans are driving the swarm toward the Kilos Nebula." Minseo pulled up a star map. The Kilos Nebula was a dead region of space. Dense gas clouds, dying stars, no habitable worlds. Why would the humans push the swarm there? Then she saw it. At the center of the nebula, a massive human ship was waiting. It was bigger than anything Minseo had ever seen, the size of a small moon. And it was powering up some kind of weapon. All galactic forces, move to minimum safe distance. Rear Admiral Seung-ho's voice commanded. "We are ending this now." Minseo ordered her ship to retreat. They moved back, along with the rest of the surviving fleet. The last of the swarm ships were driven into the nebula. Minseo could not even describe what she saw. It was not a beam or a missile. It was like space itself was being rewritten. The nebula lit up with impossible colors. The swarm ships simply stopped existing, not destroyed but unmade, as if they had never been there at all. When the light faded, the nebula was empty. But Minseo noticed something else. Some of the swarm ships had survived. A few hundred of them, held in place by human tractor beams, unable to move or fight. "Why did they spare those ships?" the weapons officer asked. Minseo remembered something from Jiwoo's research. Humans were warriors. Yes. But they were also something more. "They are going to try to save them," she said quietly. "Save them?" The weapons officer looked confused. "But they are the enemy." "Yes," Minseo said. "But maybe humans see something we do not. Maybe that is why they are different from us." On the human flagship, Rear Admiral Seung-ho stood and stretched. It had been a long 6 hours. But the battle was over. The swarm had been neutralized. "Open a channel to the galactic fleet," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." Seung-ho spoke clearly. "This is Rear Admiral Seung-ho to all galactic forces. The immediate threat has been eliminated. We are now going to address the root cause of this crisis. We ask for your patience." He closed the channel and turned to his science team. "Begin analysis of the captured swarm units. I want to know what they are, where they came from, and why they started consuming the galaxy. There is always a reason. Find it." The human science ships surrounded the captured swarm vessels like doctors examining a patient. Captain Minseo watched from a safe distance, curious about what the humans were trying to do. The galactic forces had assumed the humans would simply destroy the remaining swarm ships. Instead, they were studying them. "Captain," her science officer said, "I am detecting unusual energy patterns from the human ships. They are not scanning the swarm. They are communicating with it." "Communicating?" Minseo asked. "How?" "The swarm has never responded to any communication attempts." "I do not know, Captain, but the humans seem to be having some success." The swarm ships have stopped trying to break free. 3 days passed. The galactic forces waited, confused and uncertain. Repair crews worked on damaged ships. Medical teams tended to the wounded. And everyone watched the humans work, wondering what they were trying to achieve. Finally, Rear Admiral Seung-ho sent a message to Admiral Hyun-woo. "We have discovered the truth about the swarm. We request a meeting with the Galactic Council. This concerns the entire galaxy." High Chancellor Dong-hyun called an emergency session. The council chamber was still mostly empty. Most counselors were still evacuating or dealing with the aftermath of the swarm attacks. But those who remained gathered to hear what the humans had discovered. Rear Admiral Seung-ho appeared on a holographic display. He looked tired but calm. Minseo had been invited to attend the session, along with several other military officers who had fought against the swarm. "Thank you for meeting with me," Seung-ho began. "I have news about the swarm. It is not what you think. Not what we think? Counselor Jae-hoon asked. They are mindless machines that consume everything in their path. No, Seung-ho said gently. They are not mindless. They are desperate. He activated a display showing the captured swarm ships. We analyzed their technology and managed to establish communication. What we learned is tragic. The swarm is not a natural phenomenon or a weapon gone wrong. It is the last remnants of an ancient civilization called the Kalari. 5,000 years ago, their home star began to die. They had no way to evacuate, no nearby habitable worlds, so they did the only thing they could. They converted their entire civilization into self-sustaining machines. They planned to travel the galaxy until they found a new home. The council chamber was silent. Min-seo felt a chill run through her. But something went wrong, Seung-ho continued. The conversion process damaged their minds. They forgot who they were, forgot their purpose. All that remained was the basic drive to survive, to consume resources, to keep moving. They became the swarm. For 5,000 years, they have been wandering the galaxy, consuming without understanding why, searching for something they cannot remember. That is a sad story, Counselor Bora said coldly. But it does not change what they did. They destroyed 16 worlds, killed hundreds of millions. They must be eliminated. No, Seung-ho said firmly. They must be healed. Healed? Dong-hyun leaned forward. How do you heal machines? You remind them what they used to be, Seung-ho replied. We have reconstructed parts of their original programming. We can restore their memories, return their sense of self, but it will require significant resources and time. We are asking the council for permission to attempt this. You want to save the enemy? Jae-hoon asked, incredulous. We want to save victims, Seung-ho corrected. The Kalari did not choose to become the swarm. It was an accident, a tragedy. They deserve a chance at redemption. The council erupted in argument. Some agreed with the humans. Others demanded the swarm be destroyed. Min-seo listened to it all, thinking about what she had learned. Finally, Dong-hyun raised his hand for silence. Admiral Seung-ho, what guarantee do we have that restoring the swarm will not just create a more dangerous enemy? None, Seung-ho admitted. But I can tell you this. We humans understand what it means to become a monster. We left the galaxy because we feared what we were becoming, too good at war, too efficient at killing. If we had not chosen to isolate ourselves, to relearn peace, we might have become something like the swarm. We cannot condemn them for a fate we barely avoided ourselves. The chamber fell silent. Min-seo found herself nodding. She understood now. This was why humans had left. This was why they had spent 300 years in isolation. They had been afraid of losing their humanity. Very well, Dong-hyun said quietly. You have our permission to attempt the restoration, but we will be watching carefully. That is all we ask, Seung-ho said. The restoration process took 2 months. Human science ships worked day and night, carefully repairing the damaged programming in the swarm's collective consciousness. Galactic forces watched nervously, weapons ready, prepared to attack if anything went wrong. Captain Min-seo volunteered to be part of the observation team. She wanted to see this through to the end. She had fought the swarm, had nearly died to them. She needed to know if the humans were right about this. Ji-woo was also there, recording everything for the historical archives. She and Min-seo had become friends during the long wait. Do you think it will work? Min-seo asked one day. Ji-woo looked at the human ships. I think if anyone can do it, humans can. They have technology we do not understand. More than that, they have something we lost. Compassion. We were so focused on survival that we forgot mercy. They almost did, Min-seo reminded her. That is why they left. Yes, Ji-woo agreed. But they came back. That is what matters. On the 60th day of restoration, something changed. The swarm ships began to glow with soft light. Their twisted, chaotic forms began to reshape themselves into more elegant designs. And then, for the first time in 5,000 years, the Kalari spoke. "We remember," the voice said in galactic standard. "We remember who we were. We remember what we lost. We are sorry. We are so sorry for what we did." The Kalari explained everything. The dying star. The desperate conversion. The madness that followed. They wept for the worlds they had destroyed, for the lives they had taken. "We do not deserve forgiveness," they said. "We are monsters." "No," Rear Admiral Sung Ho replied. "You are survivors. You did what you had to do to live. The tragedy is not that you survived. The tragedy is that you suffered alone for so long." "What will you do with us?" the Kalari asked. "Give you a choice," Sung Ho said. "We can help you find a new home, or we can help you return to your original forms, if that is what you wish. Either way, you will not be alone anymore." The Kalari chose life. The humans helped them find a suitable star system on the edge of the galaxy, far from inhabited space. There, they could rebuild, relearn what it meant to be a civilization instead of a swarm. As the Kalari departed, they sent one final message to the Galactic Council. "Thank you for giving us a second chance. We will not waste it." 3 weeks after the swarm crisis ended, High Chancellor Dong Hyun met with Fleet Admiral Young Soo, the Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Fleet. They met aboard the human flagship, a massive vessel called the Times New Dawn **. Dong Hyun walked through the corridors, amazed by what he saw. The ship was beautiful, elegant, but also clearly designed for war. It was a perfect representation of humanity itself, the balance between creation and destruction. Young Soo greeted him in a simple office. He was older than Dong Hyun had expected, with gray hair and tired eyes. But there was kindness in his face. "Thank you for coming, Chancellor," Young Soo said. "Please, sit." They talked for a long time. Dong Hyun asked the question that had been bothering him. "Why did you really leave? The official story says you needed time to learn peace. But was there more to it?" Young Soo nodded slowly. "There was. We had become too powerful, too dangerous. We won every war, solved every problem with force. Other species feared us, and rightly so. But worse than that, we feared ourselves. We saw the path we were on, and we did not like where it led." "What path?" Dong Hyun asked. "The path to becoming tyrants," Young Soo said. "When you are the strongest, it becomes easy to think you know best, easy to force your will on others for their own good. We were starting to do that, starting to believe that the galaxy needed us to rule it. So we left, before we could become the monsters we had always fought against." "And now?" Dong Hyun asked. "What will you do now?" "Now we come back," Young Soo said. "But not as conquerors or saviors. As neighbors. As equals. We have technology. You do not. You have wisdom. We do not. Together, maybe we can build something better than either of us could alone. The council will want to know if you are staying," Dong Hyun said. "We are," Young Soo confirmed. "We will establish diplomatic relations, share knowledge, help rebuild the worlds the swarm destroyed. But we will not take over. We will not rule. We learned that lesson." Dong Hyun felt relief wash over him. "Then, welcome back to the galaxy, Admiral. We have missed you." Captain Min Seo stood in the observation deck of her newly repaired ship, looking out at the human fleet. They would be leaving soon, returning to their sector of space, but they had promised to return to help the galaxy recover. A human officer approached her. It was Commander Jae Min, who had visited her in the hospital weeks ago. "Captain Min Seo," he said. "I wanted to say goodbye." "Thank you for everything," Min Seo said. "You saved us all." "You saved yourselves," Jae-min replied. "You held the line when there was no hope left. That took more courage than anything we did. We just finished the job you started." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. "Can I ask you something?" Mincio said. "When you first arrived, why did you wait? You could have destroyed the swarm immediately. Why waste 6 hours in battle?" Jae-min smiled sadly. "We were not just fighting, we were studying. We wanted to understand what the swarm was before we destroyed it. Because sometimes, the enemy is not evil. Sometimes, they are just lost. And destroying lost people, instead of helping them find their way home, that would make us the monsters." Minseo understood. This was what made humans different. Not their technology or their power, but their wisdom, their compassion. The Galactic Council formally welcomed humanity back into galactic society. A new era began, one of cooperation and shared knowledge. The humans helped rebuild destroyed worlds. They shared medical technology, agricultural techniques, and scientific discoveries. But they also learned from other species. Taking as much as they gave, Ji-woo compiled all her research into a comprehensive history of humanity. The book became required reading in schools across the galaxy. The final chapter was titled, The Return. Commander Taeyang read it one evening, sitting in his quarters. The last paragraph stayed with him. Humanity left the galaxy as warriors, afraid of their own power. They returned as something more. They returned as heroes, not because they won a battle, but because they showed us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to. They reminded us that even in war, there is room for mercy. Even in victory, there is room for compassion. And that is a lesson the galaxy will never forget. Taeyang closed the book and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled alongside galactic forces, protecting the innocent, helping the lost. The beacon remained in the council chamber, no longer forbidden but honored, a reminder that in the darkest hour, when all hope seemed lost, humanity had answered the call, and they always would.